here are your hosts of Financially Tuned, Mark Fricks and Tony Shore.
Welcome to another show of Financially Tuned with me, Mark Fricks, from MasterPlan Retirement Consultants, and our host today, Tony Shore. We're really excited that you're joining us today because in this show, we're going to be discussing beneficial strategies that can help listeners avoid mistakes when dealing with individual retirement accounts, known as IRAs, and the legacy that they can produce.
Yeah, what does make up one's legacy?
Well, good question. An IRA, of course, is an account that you set up at a financial institution that allows an individual to save for retirement, and it includes tax-free growth on a tax-deferred basis, or a tax-deferred basis. It depends on the type of IRA, and there are many types. There's the traditional IRA, there is the Roth IRA, there are simple IRAs, and of course some of these are more common than others for many reasons. But the two most common IRAs are traditional and Roth IRA. And I want to just explain briefly the distinction between the two because there can be some confusion. When you're talking about a traditional IRA, Tony, you get a tax deduction for the amount you contribute to the account. So basically that just comes off of your income. So if you put $2,000 into an IRA, according to your tax return, you made $2,000 less. So it saves you on taxes going in. And then once it's in the account, any earnings or dividends or interest that it earns, you do not pay taxes on it. Now, the flip side of that is you do pay taxes when you take the money out. So sometimes that can be, kind of a catch-22. You've saved this great amount of money, it's grown and grown, and then you reach retirement and start taking money out, and you pay ordinary income taxes on it at that point. Now, is that good or bad? It depends on your situation, but that's kind of how they work. Briefly now about the Roth IRA, basically you do not get a deduction when you put money in, but from that point on, it is not taxable. It grows tax-free and it comes out tax-free. So that's a pretty good basic explanation of how those work.
Now, I wonder, actually, Mark, why more people don't plan their financial legacy then? I mean, I find it kind of interesting that we use the word legacy also instead of inheritance.
Well, Tony, it was something that we did talk about in a previous show, and I would encourage folks to go to the radio website or go to my website. We have a link to all of the past shows. But oftentimes, a legacy can be different than an inheritance. Mostly, what people think of as their legacy is the money that they leave behind to their loved ones. There are others who also view the legacy as giving charitably when you pass away, donations to something they feel strongly about, like a church or a specific fund for charity, or maybe a museum that they'd like to donate money to. So legacy to me comes across as more all-inclusive, whereas an inheritance is usually just referencing the money you leave behind to family and loved ones. I also mentioned a legacy, to me, seems to be something that you're more remembered for. It's one thing to leave somebody, a son or a daughter, a chunk of money, but to leave something that not only is monetary, but has maybe special meaning behind it, or maybe it's something that you can leave that will last beyond your children and maybe go to their grandchildren even, that will continue to give back to the family or to, again, charities.
Well, and that's so true, Mark. I was thinking when you were talking about that there were people in my life that have gone on but left a lasting impression on me based on their life story. And I thought of my grandpa Whelan. My grandfather was a great man, well-respected, kind of the family patriarch. And when he went on, he left more of what I would call a legacy. There were some material possessions or assets, but it's funny because he had 3 daughters, my mother being one of them, and my 2 aunts, and it's funny, the thing that there was the most contention over after he passed was he had a Mason's ring. He was part of the Masons, and they all wanted that ring because they knew it was special to him, and he did so much good charitable work through the Masons, helping people, and he was always quite proud of that. So,
neat.
It's neat, but all 3 of them wanted it. And had they had a planner like yourself, I know you tell me you sit down and try to get the family involved, and I think that makes a great point. Get your family involved with these decisions as well. Now, our topic of the show, avoiding IRA and legacy planning mistakes. What are some mistakes that, and what are some ways our listeners could avoid them?
Well, there's several things I want to touch on here, things to avoid when planning an IRA and legacy planning. You think about it, Tony, people have really worked hard to build their retirement assets. And I think most of them want their assets to continue to work hard for them throughout their working career and retirement years. But then if they're passing, I think they really want that legacy to continue on for generations to come, to create something that's lasting not only your lifetime, but multiple lifetimes. So the first mistake to avoid is not taking control of your assets. It's important that if you're no longer working at a specific company, then your money should not be working there either.
Well, that is interesting. I recently came across a Wall Street Journal article, Mark. It was entitled 401k versus IRA. It focused on taking control of your assets when you retire, and it talked about 401ks versus IRAs. And the 3 points that I really took away from the article were, one, that taking control of your assets is important. It gives your heirs, the opportunity to accumulate that tax-deferred wealth, avoiding high 401k fees that could possibly eat into your savings. And after rolling over and multiple rollovers, there was a guy who rolled over 8 401k plans into an IRA, and he said, I totally felt that I had more choices.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And we have a lot of discussions with folks that come in and they still have a 401k at a company that's been there maybe 5, 10, 15 years, and it's just costing them money. It's costing them opportunities. And then there's the chance, again, as you mentioned, that if they were to pass away, and most 401ks, the beneficiaries are not designed. In fact, you're not even allowed on the contingent beneficiaries to leave it in a way that could stretch beyond a generation. So there was actually a survey. It was the 2013 Investment Literacy Survey. And it stated that roughly 9 out of 10 Americans, that's over 92% of Americans, dramatically underestimated the fees they were paying in their 401ks. And people are always shocked when they hear that they're more than they thought, because the statements don't really reflect the fees. Most of them are built in. And so unless you really pick apart the prospectus and the 401k paperwork, you really don't know. Also, more than half thought that under $50,000 in fees would accrue, but the reality is upwards of $150,000 per household of fees would accrue in an average 401k over a lifetime. That's just unbelievable to me. So really, depending on someone's specific situation, rolling over their 401k plan into their personal IRA could be a beneficial option. So when considering this, it's always good to meet with a financial professional to make sure you're making good decisions that are in your best interest. And this leads into the next mistake to avoid on our list, which is failing the rollover test.
Well, maybe you could explain to us, Mark, what is the rollover test?
Well, of course, when rolling over funds into an IRA, individual has only 60 days to reinvest the funds, and that's including the amounts that may have been withheld for tax purposes, or you risk losing the tax-deferred status of the investment, essentially making the whole thing taxable, or at least the amount that did not get rolled over. And so you're talking about a pretty good tax hit. Now, there are 2 types of rollovers, and again, this can sound confusing, which is why you really need to sit down with a professional. But the 2 types of rollovers are indirect and direct trustee to trustee. So a direct rollover or transfer is much simpler and has fewer risk involved, fewer pitfalls. And really, I would suggest avoiding the pitfalls completely. Don't take a chance. So when you have a choice, you need to go with a direct rollover or direct transfer. So when a qualified IRA is transferred directly between financial institutions, there is no mandatory withholding. In other words, they don't withhold taxes, and there's no 60-day window that you could accidentally miss. So that's why we like to do it that way. So as a reminder, in order to avoid penalties and taxes, you must complete an indirect rollover within 60 days.
Wow. Well, thanks for that advice, and that's important to note. Our time actually is up for this portion of the show. We have to take a quick commercial break. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
Well, quickly, Tony, just tell folks a great plan of action. I would recommend visiting our website, perhaps. That would be a great place to start when you want to know more about how we work, what we do, and more about rollovers and IRAs. We have some great videos and articles on our website, and that's at MasterPlanYourRetirement.com. We can even send down a retirement income toolkit to you. That could be a great place to start. Or, Tony, just do it the old-fashioned way. Give our office a call, 770-980-9262.
To hear the rest of the show or for more information, go to MasterPlanYourRetirement.com or call Mark at 770-980-9262 to schedule an appointment.